and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut, taking you here through the month of May and what we call opening headlines. Sip, I want to start out. You and I were both at the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce luncheon. Just got done writing articles on Husker Online from that event, but we had a chance to hear Matt Rhule speak for 45 minutes. And we had almost about a half hour with Coach Rhule afterwards, covered a lot of ground with Coach Rhule. But, I want to start first and foremost, Matt Rhule on a public stage.
Yeah. So just kind of reset what you said. Yeah, he did a speech to about 750 people at Lincoln Chamber of Commerce event at the Embassy Suites, and then had a side session with us. But yeah, he is what I would call a dynamic speaker. I mean, it's like you said, this was like keynote speaker at a big convention in Houston type stuff.
Yeah, like you're at some conference and they fly in some guy that they pay like $10,000 to speak to the crowd. I mean, that's Matt Rhule.
He's really a natural. I mean, it's good. It's good inspirational stuff. It makes a guy like me question what I've been doing all my life. I'd say he got a B plus, A minus type thing on that speech. I thought it was really good.
He's going to ask you, why didn't I get an A, Sip?
It was mostly because the issue wasn't his doing. It was the malfunction of the projector.
I would have liked to have seen
technical difficulty.
More public question, like
technical difficulty.
So the difference between like him and Frost and that thing, Frost would not have been comfortable doing, like, not very many people are, for the record,
doing what?
A speech where you talk 40 straight minutes with
minutes.
PowerPoints that are like on point with your hand movement.
Right. And PowerPoints on. Yeah.
And like Frost or even previous coaches like Bo Pelini, They would have been like, I didn't really bring much. Our kids are working hard. I'd like to hear from you. Let's hear questions.
Oh, now be careful. Sean, we always do this, and I'm not going to let you do it all the time. Those guys were fine. They did good speeches.
Well, what I will say though is
Bo was actually very good.
You get a lot out of when like I would have liked to have seen more crowd questions. And, and I kind of like it when it's live, where you get some wild cards. Like I want to see somebody, ask them something they're not really ready for.
Right. I'm with you, Sean, in that Rhule takes it to a whole nother level. But I don't want to say those other guys just fumbled through.
No,
they didn't.
No.
I went to the Frost one a few years ago, and he was fine. I mean, but people were like all in on Frost. It's like he could have said anything, and people would have been wiping away tears and screaming.
But he was prepared.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, he was engaged. He told some good stories about the '90s and all that sort of
Rhule
thing. So,
just goes to another level.
Yeah, but none of them are Matt Rhule. No. And that's,
now what's that mean?
Apparent from day one.
Right. Now, Rhule himself says, like, one of the things he said was, all right, I have a photographic memory, and I'm going to remember all of you who are here, and after we play a few games, I'll know who's not. So he has some self-deprecation too,
and to give some backup to that claim. So I was at, and he spoke. Think how many times Matt Rhule has been speaking.
Yeah,
I was at the Omaha Metro coaches meeting, a fly on the wall in the back, just sitting back there, hanging out with the coaches I've known for a long time, and he immediately points me out and said, "Hey, we got one meeting here, though." Sean, like in a good way. But then here we are, like 4 months later, 3 months later. He goes, "Yeah, but you've heard this one kind of before, Sean, when you were at the Metro coach. I mean, that's freakish photograph. I mean,
that's pretty impressive.
That you don't just remember. I mean, think how many people in events he's done." And him on that second be like, "Oh yeah, but Sean, you were at this event when I spoke to the Metro coaches, so you heard some of this before." I'm like, God, how do you remember?
Yeah, and just so people understand, we're not saying any of this equates into
winning games.
But I mean, Nebraska has a dynamic speaker,
and we're in the first impression stage, and that falls in line with a positive first impression when you can do things like that, when you can win a room everywhere you go, every podcast you go on, every interview that you do, and you're that good and you're on at all times. I think there's something to be said for that.
I do.
To where you translate to that how he relates with his team and his coaches, and how he's got random fans eating out of his hand. Like, how players buying into that? I think it's pretty easy.
Yeah, I think the one thing I didn't do today is talk to any fans afterwards. I talked to some people, but I think he would have fans eaten out of his hands. I mean, I've heard it all, and I was engaged.
He's saying all the right things.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's genuine. That's the key,
he says it in a way where it doesn't sound phony,
like he's trying to say all the right things.
Right. Where he has like a list of talking points, like say Tom Osborne,
say walk-ons,
say 90s walk-ons, fullbacks.
When he knows how to bring some of his personal life in to engage even more, like tidbits about his wife and kids. Like people around here want to hear that kind of stuff. They want to be a part of that. And when he's like, my wife said, what are you even thinking? Like, take this job. You're an idiot if you don't take this Nebraska job. Like, people like that type of stuff. I talked to enough Nebraska fans to know there's as much interest in those nuggets as they are who the nickel corner is going to be.
Yeah. I don't know who that is, by the way, the nickel corner. Anyway, you're right. So it was good. Then he has a side session. So for people who don't understand how all this works, we didn't know if there'd be this side session with the
was not advertised.
Was there 6 or 8 reporters?
Yeah, and some people left. The people didn't even know what was going on. There were a few people that left the deal.
Yeah, so he had a session with reporters, and it was a lengthy session where we got a lot done in that.
I will say it was as good of a session as we've had with Matt Rhule since he's been at Nebraska.
Yeah, and he for instance announced that Nate Borkacher and John Bullock are now on scholarship. And then touch on several other areas, Sean, that Logan Smothers question.
And we're going to get into more of that in our next segment with quarterbacks. But I do want to hit on the walk-on thing because I do think it is important. Nate Borkacher, the tight end out of Aurora, and John Bullock, the linebacker out of Creighton Prep, to reward those guys. And I think there's this mentality now with NIL, like you don't have to put those guys on a true scholarship. You could say, let's just put them on an NIL. But I think it's a slap in the face.
Do you?
I think if you're one of the best guys on this football team and you came like a Luke Reimer, you should be on scholarship, period. Like when you're like, perfect example last year, like Colton Feast was still a walk-on. He was a starter, was playing like 50, 60 snaps a game. Stephon Wynn was on a huge NIL deal. And, how does that go over in a locker room?
Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, and especially, if your head coach is out there talking about a former walk-on, and John Bullock as a guy that has NFL potential, and you're not going to put him on scholarship when you have that opportunity. Right. I mean,
and and they're playing starter minutes.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, I lean more towards Sean on this, to where, like, especially Nebraska kids playing for Nebraska, like that walk-on path means something different than it does in a lot of other places. And so I think upholding that is the right thing to do for Matt Rhule.
And let's face it, Nate Borkacher could be a starter. I mean, listen, just think about the spring game and what you saw. He catches a 38-yard pass up the seam with the first string offense right out of the gate. It's Borkacher and Fedoni.
Yeah, we don't know if Gilbert's even going to get a waiver, and Fedoni's injury history. So
and I think we're saying Arik now.
Arik Gilbert.
We've kind of gone full circle. Ramir.
I thought it
Arik. Eric.
Easy.
Panned. I think I can help with this debate.
Arik Gilbert wasn't a first-team starter in the spring game. It was Borkacher and Fedoni. Mm-hmm. So hey, I mean, the walk-on is plays like a starter. Give him a scholarship, right?
No question.
Right.
All right. When we come back, I want to talk transfer portal topics. Things like, will Nebraska take more guys? What's Matt Rhule's stance on that? Because we did hit on that. But also, Casey Thompson finds a new home. Richard Torres finds a new home. What about Logan Smothers? We'll hit on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut. I want to talk transfer portal. I want to talk quarterbacks. First, let's get kind of the house cleaning. As we're taping this show here on Wednesday, we learned Casey Thompson officially an FAU Owl. He'll play for Tom Herman, his former coach at the University of Texas, get his kind of one season to help Tom Herman as well as himself. Then Richard Torres to Incarnate Word, A.J. Allen to Miami, which, it's a pretty good landing spot for A.J. Allen. It's interesting because if you're a place like Miami, you're wondering, like, how can you not find, think of all the skill talent in that area.
Broward County. Just fall out of your bed if you're a coach and run into somebody who runs a 4-4.
Open the window and yell down the street. You'll get a 5-star.
So, yeah, A.J. Allen goes there.
Stephon Wynn visits Ole Miss.
Oh, yeah. Casey to FAU. Casey, my guess is he didn't hear what he wanted to hear from Rhule.
No.
And we're hearing more and more about it. Casey, I just think he wanted something closer to a guarantee, that he would at least know how the competition is going to unfold. And, it was going to be tough. It was going to be tough for him.
Jeff Sims was Matt Rhule's guy that he brought here. 6'4", 220. Played for his close friend, Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech. They've called him a pro prospect. Is Casey Thompson a pro prospect? That remains to be seen.
One other thing, Rob, before we get to Rob here, I want to hear what Rob says. But the other thing that Rhule, we asked him about Smothers. And I asked him today, how much of it is that Logan can run? He goes, Rhule said right away, yeah, we're going to run the quarterback. So it's important. Mm-hmm. Casey, he can run, but you saw him last year. I thought he'd be a little bit better of a runner.
Yeah. And the durability factor. He was beat up last year. Right. And, to have him go through that again for another full season, if he were the starter, how long would he last in that style? So, a lot of questions there. I think he ended up in a good spot for him.
Do you?
Really? For beyond football reasons, reuniting with Herman, familiar offense, going to be a seamless transition there. You're the hand-picked guy. Yeah. You're going to throw the ball around in your last season, probably put up a bunch of stats, and you're in FAU. The scenery couldn't be much better than that. So, it's surprising in the sense that, before he officially hit the portal, you could still talk yourself into him winning the quarterback battle at Nebraska. Now he's a Florida Atlantic Owl, which on the surface seems like a step down, but I think as far as what Casey wanted out of this final season of college football, he's getting a lot out of that destination, I think.
I think you make a great point about Herman. There's a familiarity there. Herman, he committed to Tom Herman in 2017. Mm-hmm. It was Tom Herman's first big quarterback recruit at Texas.
Yeah, so perfect fit systematically.
But he's going to go down there and play in front of 18,000 people. It'll be a bit of a shock to the system that way.
It's hot. Think about how hot it is down there in September playing games too. Yeah. It's hurricane season down in Florida. It would be interesting. I've been to FAU. Their practice field literally sits next to an airport. There's a fence.
Is that right? Is that right?
Their private aviation airfield sits next to this fence, and the planes land during practice.
But hey, he'll be playing at Clemson, at Illinois, so
he'll get plenty of reps. It's a good up, and they're in the American Conference now, so they're no longer a Conference USA member. FAU is moving up, which will be but is moving up. What does that mean when the American lost all their good teams to the Big 12?
Right.
But he'll go there. Richard Torres, I think that's a good fit for him. Incarnate Word back in San Antonio, running an air raid offense.
Did you run the air raid?
That will fit his style.
It's perfect. That's perfect. That's what he should be in. He's not a runner. He can run. He's athletic. He can run a little bit. It's a misnomer to say Richard Torres can't run. He can, but he's a passer. He's a pocket guy.
Yeah.
Now, Logan Smothers, I'll be curious on.
Tell us what Rhule said.
The door remains open, he said, for any of those three. But two of them already found homes.
Right.
But you just don't know. Maybe they can convince Logan if they can create a role for him. Because what are his options? I think the natural is could he go to South Alabama? Right near his home of Muscle Shores.
He could go better than that, couldn't he?
It's hard to say. It just does he have the arm talent to be an every down quarterback as a starter? I think that's the question. We know he's a Division I athlete.
Question.
He's a lot like Luke McCaffrey was. He's definitely a D1 athlete.
Better passer than that. Passer than that. I think better.
But as far as
or he'll be playing receiver Rice too.
But would Logan come back and play a dual threat role of a wildcat, receiver, quarterback, kind of do a little bit of everything? Would he be interested in that?
I don't know. I think I got to be honest. I don't know. We're speculating, but I would think that would be a hard sell. We're just going to use you in a hybrid role. I would hope that he would say, no, I want to be a quarterback. I'm a quarterback.
And if he's coming back, I think what you would sell him on is the fact that Jeff Sims has missed extensive time with injuries.
He has.
And
thanks for saying
so,
that.
I mean, like, it's not a sure thing, as we've talked plenty of times about him going wire to wire. And so the need for a backup quarterback is pretty high. I mean, in today's game, and especially at a place like Nebraska with a quarterback like Jeff Sims that has the injury history that he does.
Super high. I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people would say to me, well, except Casey's been hurt a lot. Well, so is Sims.
Mm-hmm.
Sims is, I think, has missed about as much time as Casey.
He missed like 5 games last year.
Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. That number 2 job, I mean, let's face it, this is a critical question as we go forward.
Yeah.
Who is
every season? It's defined Nebraska's success because the starter goes down, and do they have a backup that is even capable of leading a first down, let alone a touchdown drive?
Who is it, and how good is he? We don't know who it is. It sounded today, Sean. I thought it sounded today like Harbor.
I think it's a situational number 2. Like, what if Sims gets hurt in a game? Who comes in? But what if you have a whole week to prepare the guy? Who's that guy? Because I think it could be different in those situations.
Meaning who? So if what are you talking about? Like if Sims goes down,
gets hurt in the third quarter, who you bringing in is different.
Is that Chubba?
Is Chubba more prepared for that than Harburg? If you gave Harburg a week to train as the starter, like, because I do think if you know someone's starting, you change the game plan.
Right. Yeah. I see where you're coming from. That makes sense. I mean, what you're basically saying is Chubba has experience, right? That you could throw him in, say, in the second half against Louisiana Tech in maybe a tight game at Memorial Stadium where Heinrich might not be quite ready for all that on the spot, right? Chubba would be. Chubba's been at Michigan, started at Michigan. Is that basically what you're saying, Sean?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. As we wrap up transfer portal discussion talk, what about what's next? Will Nebraska take anyone else from the portal? And just talking to Matt Rhule on Wednesday, you get the sense that they're done. Like, I think they're looking. They've like everyone, they're looking. But I think the crop of players right now is nowhere near what it was in December.
There's not much there, Rob.
Especially for what Nebraska needs. They need linemen, and there's just no linemen.
I mean, look at A.J. Allen. Do you think in December, someone like that could have gone to Miami? But all of a sudden, in a lesser pool, A.J. Allen and Alante Brown are getting big offers.
I don't know this, but I don't know, guys, if A.J. Allen was above third string coming out of spring.
Well, just based on the way the reps were.
And how much time he missed with that injury, concussion, whatever it was.
Well, just go through the guys. How much do they like Gabe Ervin?
A lot.
Okay, Anthony Grant. Would you put him ahead of Anthony Grant? No way. Not right now.
Anthony Grant ran for 1,000 yards.
I mean, 915. He's the most proven back in that room.
Grant is. So Anthony Grant. And then how much do they like Ramir?
As a
Johnson.
Yeah.
They like him.
As a multi-purpose guy.
Yeah.
And what
you know what I like about this? You know what I like the most? Sorry to cut you off. It sounds like A.J. Allen moving means Ramir Johnson's a running back. That's right. Yeah. They're not gonna keep moving him around, are they?
You'd hope not. Because otherwise he's not going to play.
Right.
He needs a role.
The body language of A.J. Allen, too, sometimes it just didn't read very well.
No, it didn't.
I mean, and there was that clip that went around from spring ball of him and E.J. Barthel kind of getting into it in practice.
And then
he left.
Well, he didn't leave. He was told to leave.
But
Sean, he was told to leave. There's a big difference.
He
didn't leave on his own accord, Sean. He was told to leave for the practice. Now, A.J. Allen ran in the spring game like a guy who was transferring. I didn't think he was cutting loose. I thought he ran like a guy that was like, okay, I can't get hurt here because I'm on the move.
He ran like a guy that came here on promises that those promises before no longer can be met.
Ooh, I think that's probably true.
He came here late. He was a late addition. He came here because of a new running backs coach in Nebraska hired. That guy's gone. The previous staff's gone. Whole new set of cards and different management.
Yeah. Some guys, hey, now listen, a lot of guys fit that description. Some handle it better than others. Some handle it just fine. They just say, whatever. I'll prove myself on the field.
Yeah. I'm not going to sugarcoat it too much, though, because that's a loss. I mean, A.J. Allen, from a talent perspective, Like he was good
from his 190 yards. You saw enough against. I mean, are you just going off the North Dakota game?
No, I'm going to flash at Northwestern too. I mean, like the games that he was in, he just. How many times did we talk about him?
I know,
like about how he's a critical piece of that backfield.
Yeah, we're gonna get called out by people.
But
so
did we see those?
I'm not going to act like this was like a ho hum. They lost a 4th-string running back. Like sure, maybe like it evolved that way, but from a pure talent standpoint, going into the spring, we all had him a potential starter
going in. Now going in.
Exactly.
I guess what we got to here is the crux of the matter is this. Going in, I'm with Rob. I thought that. I'd always say I think he was going to surpass Grant. Coming out of spring, I don't know.
Yeah, no, the tone definitely changed.
And Matt Rhule can't concede and like give in to any player at this point. If you do, you get yourself in trouble.
You start upholding promises you didn't give. You know,
look what Scott Frost and the Reese Washington thing did.
Yeah,
like he made concessions from Reese Washington based on his talent. And it blew up.
Oh, yeah.
It really did.
In the 2019 season where Nebraska was ranked, picked to win the Big Ten West.
Never
blew up, never recovered from that moment.
I mean, let's put it this way. I never felt comfortable with any of that. I mean, we're just like most people. We're not real different. I bet guys on the team were uncomfortable with it. You know, like, why is he gets a little different treatment. You know?
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk June and what that looks like for Nebraska with official visits, camps, satellite camps. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Guys, let's talk June, visitors, camps, because we've got a better idea of what the plan is going to be for Nebraska and Matt Rhule. And we've seen this kind of evolve over time, but there's a few things that have changed with June now. You can now take unlimited official visits, meaning you're not just locked into 5. So kids can go to more than one trip now, more than 5 schools. They can only visit you once. So I think there's a little bit more strategy. And it used to be everybody brought in their top guys the first weekend of June. That's how Nebraska did it. You heard Matt Rhule. I asked him this on Wednesday.
Okay.
Kind of the plan.
Okay.
The June 23rd through 25th weekend is going to be their priority weekend, but also the June 16th weekend as well.
Could be.
Could be. So you've got 2 potential June weekends. So what's the front end of June look like? It's going to be camps.
Okay.
And I found this interesting that Rhule said that he wants all of his coaches to be involved in the coaching and the teaching and the camps. Because I've seen this at a lot of camps where, basically the camps are just kind of like your GAs and interns and other people working them. And the assistant coaches are busy whining and dining the recruits during Friday Night Lights camps and other things. Rhule doesn't want that. He wants his coaches to work all the camps. So the beginning of June will be that. They will actually then go to Belton, Texas and Houston, Texas on June 5th and June 6th, a Monday and Tuesday. The entire 10 coaches, along with Matt Rhule, will work 2 satellite camps at Mary Hardin, Baylor, and then Houston Christian. So it's going to be just as you would expect. There's going to be a lot of work in June for Matt Rhule and the staff.
There'll be. I mean, what kind of prospects are at those satellite camps, player-wise?
Younger.
You're
not going there to find the 24s. You might find a 24.
Okay.
DiCaprio Boodle is like a guy they found at something like that, but that's like the rarity. But what you hope to do is you hope to find like a 25 or a 26 that you lay eyes on, and then you get them on the radar and say, all right, let's get this guy to a game.
Can the coaches talk to the kids at these camps?
Yes.
Oh, they can.
They work them.
Okay.
So like Matt Rhule and his staff,
like I just started doing.
Go down and work the camps, and they interact with the kids and engage with the kids. They work it, and they're really beneficial, but they're a lot of work.
Sure. That is a lot of work.
Like I'll never forget, like at Texas A&M, this is fun. I can share this story now because Kevin Sumlin's long gone, and
he's still alive.
But at the camp,
so be careful. He's not long gone in a
Greg.
He hasn't passed.
Greg, Nate Klaus, and I were working the Texas A&M Adidas satellite camp.
Okay,
and we got kicked out of the camp. They said no media.
Oh, yeah,
and they were really strict there. Kevin Sumlin didn't, but there was like 1,000 parents walking around.
Oh boy!
And I'm like, the heck with this. I go back to the Walmart. I'm like, I don't wear a hat very often.
Yeah.
I went and got a hat at Walmart. I changed.
You did. What kind of cap was it?
Like a Walmart.
A Titleist. Nice.
Hat.
That's a good move.
And I'm like, let's just separate. We all walk around, do our own thing at the camp. I'm going to dress like I'm just a dad watching the camp. Yeah. And they didn't know who I was. And so I watched the entire camp. Nate watched the entire. We just walked around in dad gear.
Well, thanks for sharing that bit of unethical behavior, sure.
But hey,
no,
you gotta be a hustler. Like I am not gonna let some guy there's thousands of people and they just say you out of here. Like no.
Okay, so Sean always says you got a 22, 23 on your ACT, got a 36 in the streets.
So we did our stand-ups outside with the backdrop, and our friend Jason Hallett texted. Said they were mad. They were like, "How did those guys get in there and see it all?"
We got the tideless cap.
We figured
pull
it
that
out,
baby down over that big melon.
But anyway, those satellite camps. What I'll never forget is like the impression Keith Williams and Dante Williams.
Yes.
So there's 20 or 30 D1 teams working these camps. They stood out. It was good for Nebraska. Like all the parents were like, man, those two Nebraska guys are great. So if you go down there, long story, what I'm getting around to is you get to visualize these coaches out in the grassroots of recruiting.
Yeah.
And they're working with kids.
That's awesome.
Parents see them.
Yeah.
And they're instructing. And I think that's a big piece of it. If you can go to these events and make an impression that carries over a year or two later.
Yeah, absolutely. Critical. So then again, the late part of June is recruiting oriented.
Yeah, and then it goes dead. So that June 26th weekend, that last weekend, the dead period starts like the next day. So then it's dead for July.
Okay. All right.
And then there's 1 week in July where you can bring visitors again.
Okay. All right,
and some people do, and you can have camps again too. Some people do, and some people don't.
Well, does Nebraska have July camps?
No, they've never done it. I mean, what I would say is the teams that do that are lower Power 5-ish or Group of 5 schools that can't compete to get kids to their camp. So then it gets them to have an opportunity to, a lot of times you're focusing on getting ready for the season at that point, and you don't want to mess with a camp. So no, Nebraska. And the fullback camp too is fascinating.
Yeah. Are we now? What about? I know I'm getting deep into the weeds for our very hardcore members. Are we allowed access to these camps?
This is pretty much for Sugarland, Texas, and a few other of our hardcore members.
Yeah. Are we allowed? Yeah, we do love Sugarland because he's smarter than me. What? Hey, what is the deal? Are we allowed access?
Yes,
we are.
Because the camps are open to the public. I mean, there's restricted area. But the grass field will be shut down
unless you have a tideless cap on.
Yeah, I just gave away my whole
your game plan.
I can't really hide around here, but in College Station, really Texas,
tideless cap's not going to do it.
Yeah, and it was that was a true. I was really proud that we pulled that off.
I am too. Love you.
They took Greg's camera and pulled it out. I mean, they took it down. They're like, no filming.
Really?
Oh yeah,
really. Did Greg go out there too?
No, he didn't go back. I'm trying to think. He got a few clips at the beginning before we had to leave the camp.
Okay. Interesting, Sean.
But yeah, we changed it up on him.
Yeah, that's an interesting anecdote.
All right, you're listening here to the Husker Online Show. When we come back, we're going to take your questions in the mailbag. Abby Barmore will join us next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Let's welcome in Abby Barmore to the program. Abby, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Oh, hold on. I didn't bring you up here. Now you're on.
All right, Abby.
Oh, wow.
You're a part of the show now.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, what do you have? Mailbag time. What are you going to bring us?
Will Nebraska be able to establish a better running back run game under Rhule like we haven't seen recently?
I think the big element is the running quarterback and the threat of Jeff Sims being a runner. It just adds another layer of what you have to prepare for, which helps the running back, where I felt like the run game under Mark Whipple was very predictable. There wasn't a lot of design to it.
I guess. I mean, I think when I think of a run game, though, I don't think of the quarterback running. I think of a run game where you can the quarterback can hand off and you can get yards from your running backs when you need them. And when you're looking to salt away a game, it's not let's put it on Adrian Martinez. No, let's put it on a running back or running back.
But just the element of Sims running helps the running backs. That's
for sure. I agree with that.
I also think the depth in that room will help to where it's not all going to be on one guy like it was last year, where Anthony Grant was the only running back run game Nebraska had. And by the end of the year, he was worn down.
What if you have that guy, though?
Do they have that guy?
What if you have the guy at Illinois
I don't know if they have
Chase
a
Brown.
25, 30 carry.
I don't either,
guy.
but if you have that guy.
Yeah, if you have Chase Brown or Mo Ibrahim, then
right.
yeah, sure, you ride him, but Nebraska doesn't.
There are less than 10 of those guys in college football.
Now, if you give Grant and Irvin, 10 to 15 carries a game each, then I think you got a pretty good deal there.
You know what Nebraska has that maybe the best answer to this question is? They have a fullback. They're running a fullback. They're running the I formation. Abby, I think that's the best answer. Yeah, I think they will improve. They're running a fullback. They're running out of the I, and Bonner can do it.
Well, and
Janire and Bonner.
He did hint, though, that Braden Clover from Wymore, who are our good friend in Beatrice Husker Lunch, is connected to. He was actually more of the lead blocking fullback they would use, but Bonner really surprised them in the spring game, showing that he can do it too. So I like that picture of Bonner
and Clover
because, having Bonner even lead block, because then it throws the defense off because you don't know for sure when Bonner's only in for pass plays, it's a little bit easier to prepare.
You have to account for him just as much as a receiver as you do a lead block fullback. So, there's a lot of versatility there. But I remember on Monday, Rhule mentioned that too, where Janarian hadn't done a lot of lead blocking in all spring, but just out of necessity because of the limited numbers in the spring game, he had to do some of that, and they were really impressed with. So I think going forward, maybe that becomes more of something that is on Bonner's plate than it was through the spring.
And you know what else about Bonner? He can run it.
Yes, he can.
He's a threat. He's a threat at fullback.
Tough.
Tough. Yeah.
All right, next one. Will we see packages of Heinrich Harburg this season, and what are the odds of them putting Jeff Sims and Harburg on the field at the same time?
It's really hard to say because I think it could be week to week. Strategy changes, but you have to think week 1, Thursday night, Minneapolis, Minnesota, they're going to come out with some wrinkles that Minnesota's just not going to know what they are. And that Nebraska's going to go into that game. What's the early number? 8? They're already 8.9-point dogs.
Yeah. I think the last I saw was 8.
So they've got to figure out a way early to take advantage of the unknowns and get Minnesota off guard in that first game because there's zero to prep for on the new personnel of Nebraska.
It's true.
I don't see the need to do that, really. Sure, maybe like a play or two here with like lining up Harburg in a special package because you already got that
offense.
You already got that guy in Sims. You got a 6'4", 220-pound running quarterback. Like, why do you need to bring in another guy for that?
I'm a snob.
That's not as experienced.
Okay, I'm a snob. I am. I like Nebraska. I am when it comes to this stuff. I'd like Nebraska to get back to where we don't talk about bringing in guys for pack.
Mm-hmm.
Does CJ Stroud? Does Ohio State do that? They bring in some package for CJ Stroud's backup? I don't think so. Now they did it back when they had that Miller, that really good run,
Braxton
Miller. But does Alabama? Are there media talking about? Hey, maybe they bring the backup in for a package. I don't know. I know it's apples and oranges.
Like if Sims were like an immobile pocket guy, sure, I could see it. But like he's probably a better runner, more proven runner than Harburg.
That's Arena Ball League stuff. I just prefer that
when Nebraska was really good, teams would try to do that to them, and they would just smother it. It would be like they'd come out with some gimmicky.
I know what happens. Listen, I know what happens. I watch football like you guys. I know what stuff happens. I just prefer you don't do it.
Okay, next question. Name 3 top-level recruits that Nebraska has a real shot at getting.
Gatlin Bear, Brandon Baker. Those are
2 good ones.
Those are 2, and Carter Nelson. I think those are 3 that I'd go with right now. There's more, but they're in the final 5 for Gatlin Bear. Brandon Baker's coming back for another visit. I would like to think Nate Frazier will too. I don't know that though. Nate Frazier he's now the number 1 ranked running back in the country on 3. And he's just going to keep getting more and more attention when he's got Georgia on his list and other teams like that, Alabama. So that will be hard. It'll be interesting then get Nate Frazier back, but they're going to get Gatlin Bear back. They're going to get Brandon Baker back. And we know Carter Nelson will be back again.
The fact that that's a realistic list and not just a wish list is pretty remarkable. You're talking about like elite level players that are firmly on the radar and within the realm of possibility. That's credit to Matt Rhule and the staff for the work they've done.
And there's some people that kind of scoff or chuckle that you'd even consider like Brandon Baker, but he's legitimately interested in Nebraska. I think there's just this, beat down effect of what the last few years have been as a Nebraska fan, that you feel like you're just being played by some of these guys, if they're just, using this as leverage, whether it's for NIL or social media attention or whatever the reasons are. But we have spent as much time with Brandon Baker as anybody in the state of Nebraska, other than the coaches. And
it's genuine. Yeah. I mean, his interest is genuine.
I've ate dinner with him 3 times since when he's come here. I've had interviews with him 2 times. So I've been around him enough to know that the interest is genuine.
He asks you questions that he would not ask if he was just going through the motion.
He's curious.
Yeah.
But can they show him enough to want to come here? And I look at the players for Brandon Baker right now as Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Oregon. I think those are the 4 players with Nebraska. USC is out of it from my read. UCLA out of it. Those are the teams. Colorado maybe even to an extent, but it's going to take a lot for me to believe in Colorado that they're going to really, really get it going.
Yeah.
What do you got?
All right. What are your thoughts on Nebraska's baseball team, and what do you think will happen at the end of the year?
I think that Will's team isn't reflective of Will. Will, as you guys remember, Rob is old enough, Sean's certainly old enough to remember Will as a player was a tough, gritty, no back down. And that's
Van Horn.
And he was, I think he was Dave's first recruit. So I think that's right. And he was like Van Horn, and Van Horn was like that. Van Horn's a gunslinger. Van Horn's a guy you wouldn't want to tangle with. He's that guy. I don't think his team reflects that. And that's probably the first thing I'd say from a sort of a 30,000 foot view.
This is a whole nother generational conversation, but it's hard to find guys like that now.
Is it? Yeah.
I mean, just tough bunker dudes.
Right. Yeah.
That want to get down and dirty and fight. There aren't that many. I mean, it's just not.
They're an odd team. Nebraska's an odd team because they have 2 superstars.
They have 2 like all-American level players.
2 superstars.
This is like getting in the weeds a little bit to your point, Sean. I saw something on it was TikTok or Instagram or something. It was a baseball coach talking about like recruits and like players these days. And he's like, look at the major leagues. Look at the demographics of where guys are coming from in the major leagues. They're not coming from suburban select teams. They're coming
overseas.
They're coming from dirt fields and Puerto Rico, and that's where that grit mentality, I think as far as like recruiting, like that's something that is a real thing. Like the players in the United States,
fascinating.
That's the way the youth model is going. It's like becoming a different game than it was even when Will Bolt was coming up.
Well, I would go to the NBA too. Look at the demographics in the NBA, who the best players are. I would ask you this. I'm just going to ask you this question. I'm going to leave it at who are the best American white players? I mean, they're Tyler Hero. Okay.
Dude from the Lakers.
Yeah. He's second, probably. Reeves. Yeah. Okay. Now that's probably the 100th best player in the NBA. Okay. 105th best, 110th best player in the NBA. But the baseball thing that's fascinating what you just said.
And you have to be careful because, a lot of people that listen and they have kids, they put a lot of money into select sports and travel.
I get it.
But baseball's baseball. Watch a game, and what Rob said, you'll see it. It's right.
That aren't my words. It was from an actual college baseball coach, and I'm sure I could find it somewhere. But
I saw the same TikTok you're talking about. That just the youth model in general is not developing pros like maybe the grassroots model. I look at good example. Our friend Jim Rose from KFAB and former Husker play-by-play guy. He kept his kid as a rec baseball player all the way through 8th grade. And he goes to Westside, and he could throw as hard as anybody on that team, but didn't play in these select models. Never really kind of got the benefit of the doubt, the tiebreakers. He was the 5th starter for that.
5th starter in the rotation.
He's now in AAA. He had to go JUCO. Then he went to Minnesota, won a Big Ten title, got drafted by the Marlins. He's now in AAA. Will probably have a pretty good chance to be on the Marlins roster this year. Didn't play an ounce of heavy select ball. Because Jim did not believe in it. He said, you overthrow these kids, you burn them out, you want them to still have fun doing it. So I think there is some, when you talk about baseball in general, but it's so hard. Because if your kid is good everybody wants him, and it's addicting. As a parent, you're like, this is cool. Like, people want my kid on their teams.
Yeah, you can't. It's hard to make. For instance, if you're trying out for Lincoln Southeast basketball team, if you're not in a select summer program, you don't really have a prayer.
You just can't walk in there.
No, it's hard.
They know who the guys are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Rose is an anomaly. You don't see that very often. A kid that grew up suburb to an extent of Omaha, didn't play any select. He's now going to be in the majors.
He's on the cusp of the major leagues.
All right, final question.
What is your favorite Sean Callahan analogy?
Oh, God.
This is a big one.
This is a big one.
I don't even get to answer my own question.
Rob.
I could just think of the new ones. Like, this was a chat question, I remember. Gosh, there's been so many good ones. Didn't you have like a horse racing one? I can't remember what it was. But like the airplane one, like,
The airline tickets.
Yeah, the airline tickets,
flight.
like if oversold flight.
What is that?
Well, Matt Rhule had an oversold flight. He had a flight with 85 seats in it, and he had 100 tickets sold. He had to get 15 passengers off the plane.
The plane's not leaving.
Some guys booked new flights. Other guys took the free tickets.
Some guys went to the airport bar. And
there's all kinds of recruiting analogies that involve dating.
Yeah. The bar scene is a go-to.
Yeah, the bar scene. Give us that.
The one I shared in the chat this week was a lot of Nebraska's recruiting classes were like Las Vegas shotgun weddings. I mean, you found a girl, got married in a weekend, but then 3 or 4 months later, when they got here, you learned about all their problems. And then how do you build a program on that?
How do you build a marriage?
How do you build them? But I'm saying for Nebraska football, they've had a scurry and scramble.
No, you're right,
with
Sean.
Roster building.
Yeah, I've long believed that. I used to tell Sean on our private talks, like he'd always use an analogy. I was like, why don't you take those to the air? Those are really good. Those are really good. They're entertaining.
Spontaneous, too. Yeah. That's what always catches me up.
I've never heard anybody use as many as analogies as Sean. Just in private conversation, he's really good at it.
I have a weird gift for movies, like to bring them in.
Yeah, he can reference pretty much any situation in life to some like late 80s, early 90s action.
We relive a lot of Curb Your Enthusiasm scenes too. When we
Larry David, yep.
Oh God,
go to
some of like
highly inappropriate show, by the way.
We saw a guy in the Dublin airport. Remember this? We were leaving Dublin, and he was wearing like not just a mask,
easy Sean,
like a full space helmet.
Right. He was being cautious. Sean, he was being cautious.
I'm just like, can you imagine like if Larry David and him were like encountered?
What do you do? What do you? We go scuba diving.
Any other questions?
I go
skiing later.
I think I'm on the wrong flight. This guy's going to space. Where are we going? All right, when we come back, we're going to close the show with some basketball talk. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Welcome back here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut. Let's close with a little basketball discussion with Robin Washut as the roster continues to churn and move for Fred Hoiberg as they're looking at some new guys. They've made some new local offers in the last few weeks. Robin, what's the latest intel brewing with the rebuilding of this roster for Fred Hoiberg?
Yeah, so at midnight on Thursday night, the entry deadline for the transfer portal hits. So as far as like any further departures, that conversation ends midnight on Thursday night. So that's at least that next step in moving forward into the offseason. But after that, with 2 open scholarships, there is no deadline. The deadline is the start of the fall semester in August. So there's no really like hard press, like have to get a guy by this date. But you also got to take into effect Nebraska has a accelerated offseason calendar this year because of that Spain trip at the end of July. So normally they want players in there at the beginning of June, but if a guy, they're waiting on somebody to get cleared or whatever it may be, they have that luxury. That's not so much this year. So with 2 open spots, I can tell you for a fact Nebraska is still recruiting, and they're still going after high-level portal targets that could be upgraded about what they currently have on the roster. So that's being said, no names. I can't give you any names right now.
What positions?
I would guess lead guard, someone that can play one or the two, and then maybe another scoring stretch 4 type. Especially after losing Breidenbach, just having another body there to fill that role. Probably a younger guy too, because you look at what they have in that front court, they're all old. Juwan Gary still has 2 years, Rink Mass still has 2 years, but they're veteran players. And so to have someone you can groom in that role would be ideal. But if there's a priority of those two, I'm going to say another lead guard. And I think, to be quite honest with you, I think in a perfect world, they would try to get another point guard that would be good enough to beat out Tyler Ulis and be the starting point guard, with Ulis being the backup. If he has to be the starter, I think they're perfectly okay with that. But if the right player and the right fit comes along at that lead guard spot, it would not surprise me if Nebraska pulled the trigger.
Robin, what's the latest you think they would add somebody more for the team next year?
I mean, they've added guys as late as August before. So I obviously, because of their offseason calendar, I don't expect that. I would probably say by that June deadline, for when the first 5-week summer session starts and guys report for summer workouts, I think that the goal is for the roster to be finalized well before then. So we're probably looking at another couple weeks yet of recruiting to see, what potential options might still be out there. But, like I said, if something's going to happen, it's going to have to happen relatively quickly.
Is Keisei Tominaga working out for NBA team?
I have not heard anything. There's been zero reports. He did not get an invite to the combine, which is no surprise. So at least that gives you further indication that
I saw him at Laszlo's Friday.
Yeah,
further indication of
that he's not going to draft him. So if you're not going to the combine, your odds of getting drafted are slim to none, which his was already slim to none. So I think if he does have workouts, no one's heard of it, like literally nobody. So I got to figure out that. But right now I think it's just a formality. The 23rd, I believe, is that's the deadline to declare. The deadline to remove your name from the early entrance list is June 1st. So again, another one of those deals. We have a couple more weeks where technically he goes through this process, but I think everyone is pretty much operating as if he's going to be back already.
I saw him last Friday, though. I'm guessing he's just finishing classes.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around. He was out up in Ashland Greenwood with Cale Jacobson at one of the school events up there, just helping out. So, I mean, he's just going to Laszlo's, having lunch. Like, he's just being Mr. Nebraska. So, again, I think the big part for him was that evaluation, where you get that pre-draft evaluation where they run down all your strengths and weaknesses and what you need to do to have a better chance to make it to the next level. He got that already, well before that official list came out with his name on it that he had declared. So I think right now it's just kind of a formality at this point. If he gets a chance to work out with some teams, sure he's going to jump on it. But really, I think that's just more of a taking advantage of the opportunity than any real goal of making the draft.
You're listening here to the Husker Online show. Segueing to some other recruiting topics. State track meet will be going on next week. Jalen Lloyd will be trying to get 4 gold medals. Probably has a realistic chance at 2, I would say. Long jump and triple jump. Unless he runs far better than what he's run this year, it's going to be hard for him to win that 100-meter title. And then he's going to be on the 4x1 team for Westside. So that will be a storyline recruiting we'll be following to see how Jalen Lloyd does. And a number of other, Husker names in that state track meet. Davon Hall, Isaiah McMorris from Bellevue West. Hall could win the high jump. McMorris and Hall both qualified in the 100. They're also on the 4x1 team for Bellevue West.
And what about Carter Nelson?
Carter Nelson. So he will take part in 4 events at districts, and we're taping Wednesday. Their districts are on Thursday. But the 4 events he'll try to qualify for are high jump, discus. Now I'm trying to think. High jump, discus, pole vault.
What about one of the sprints?
And then
100, 200?
Yeah, I think it's I forget. Now I have to double check what the 4th
That's
event
okay.
was. But he's going to try for 4 events.
Okay.
With high jump, pole vault, and discus being 3 of them. And God, it might be shot put. Now I need to look back at what I wrote on Monday.
Either way, a diverse field that he'll be competing.
Well, and
freak athlete.
There's a fullback that's walking on at Nebraska from Columbus Lakeview, and he had himself a day at the state track meet. I want to break
or what district track meet?
Yeah, district track meet. Excuse me. So they've added these late walk-ons, and this is worth noting. Landon Turnus from Columbus Lakeview he's a fullback coming in. He's like 215, 220. He was a state champion wrestler at 220. Okay. Ran the 110.89, ran the 223.12, shot put 59.10, discus 165.
And people have images of Makovica, Schlesinger.
Well, Columbus, Schlesinger.
Yeah, Schlesinger. Who else? Come on. Tim Yonk.
Judd Davies.
Who's the one that was from Grand Island?
Tom Rathman.
Yeah.
Sean, come on.
I was trying to say Lance Lewis because
Lance Lewis is a good one.
I loved Lance Lewis.
Lance Lewis was a great
fullback.
Yeah. Tom Rathman, Sean.
But Landon Turnus plays for
Steve Krewald.
Kirk Frenzen.
Yes, great
coach. Great Columbus Lakeview
state champion coach,
and had a great district track meet. So that's a name.
Look at him now. That does look like an old school Nebraska fullback right there. Tell me it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Then Landon Turnus
looks like Krewald, by the way.
Or I want to Tristan Alvano, the kicker. This is notable because it tells you what kind of athlete Alvano is. He ran a 53.18 in the 400.
Fake.
What?
Fake. No, fake punch, Sean.
Oh,
fake punch.
Oh, it's like fake time. Like
no, I meant fake.
Are you accusing me of cheating?
I meant
he's the kicker.
Wow, Sean's face.
He's a
fake.
It tells you what kind of athlete. I mean, like, do you think some of the previous kickers could run a 53 in the 400?
Oh, well, hold on now. How about Sam? Could he have?
Foltz?
Yeah.
Oh, he did. Sam Foltz ran a 50.
Okay, well, there you go.
But I'm saying we're talking kickers, not punters.
Oh, okay.
But he's a good athlete, and he ran a.
But doesn't he punt a little bit?
No.
Oh, he doesn't. Okay.
No, he's just kicker.
All right, let's end the show.
All right. At that point, let's get some medic help here to the hospital.
Let's get some medicine in me.
Dropped his handkerchief on Matt Rhule's shoe.
I did today
too. That was quite a moment.
Yeah, that was quite a moment. And I wish I could say it was a handkerchief. It was just a wadded up something.
Brown paper towel.
Yeah, I don't even know.
We're off to a great start.
Well, thank you. Make sure check us out, HuskerOnline.com. We got a great special, 6 months for $29.99. Get access to HuskerOnline.com. Check us out here. Like us, follow us on YouTube. Also, anywhere you find podcasts, just type in Husker Online. Also, we'll have full baseball coverage this week. So make sure you're online at HuskerOnline.com.